Greetings and welcome to IKG September Wisdom Wednesday. I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Atlantis Browder, and I will be filling in for our sister Ajwa tonight. Before we jump into the program, we love to begin our program by doing a check-in. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to put your name in the chat and let us know where you're checking in from. We tend to have brothers and sisters join in not only from all over the country, but all around the world. So let's see who's checking in with us tonight. We have North Carolina in the house. We have Maryland in the house, of course, Georgia, Dominican Republic, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Inglewood, California, Mo County, Maryland, Philadelphia, South Carolina, Oakland, California. All right, we have folks all over the country. Yes, keep on letting us know. Go ahead and put in the chat. Let us know where you're from and take a moment just to check that out as I move forward. Thank you all again for joining. And I want to now take a moment to share just a few housekeeping tips. Um, of course, we have the chat open, so we encourage you to use it to not only communicate with each other, but let us know the information that resonates with you. We always have some really great note takers in the house, and they're dropping in some of those themes or highlights. So let's support each other, as I know folks are taking notes and want to make sure they capture all that information. So we will also have Q&A towards the end of the program, and we ask that you use the Q&A feature. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you hover your mouse, you'll find the Q&A feature, and we ask that you use that instead of the chat because it makes it a little bit difficult to scroll and find the questions. So if you put them in the Q&A box, we'll do our best to make sure our presenter tonight answers all of the questions that come in. Last but not least, all of our Wisdom Wednesday recordings, along with tonight's recordings, will be available on the IKG YouTube page, and I'll be sure to drop that link in the chat momentarily. So now, before we introduce tonight's guest, I have a few announcements. As you all saw on the PowerPoint, the images playing at the beginning, we have a couple of events coming up this weekend, Friday, September 20th and Saturday, September 21st. So this Friday, we have the Brother to Brother featuring Dr. Charles Finch and Anthony Browder. And also on Saturday, we have a special event, and I'm going to let our guest speaker, who's going to share a bit more details about this event before they jump into their presentation. So please make sure you're listening. We'll put the links in the chat so that you can come out and support the special fundraising events that are taking place this weekend. And last but not least, IKG is now accepting applications for our 2025-2026 season for the IKG Cultural Imperative Program. So for those who may not be familiar with CIP, it's a Saturday program specifically for African American high school students. And over the course of 10 sessions, these high school students read from the Browder File, which is Mr. Browder's first book, first publication, and the students engage for 3 hours per session. They engage in not only reading, but engaging with a phenomenal curriculum that's designed to promote critical thinking, self-love, and a deep understanding and appreciation for African history. So I'll put that information in the chat for those who might be interested in bringing CIP to your community. So with that out the way, I not only have the honor of hosting tonight's program, but I have the honor of introducing tonight's guest, someone who is very near and dear to my heart, and that is my father, Mr. Anthony Browder. So tonight, he will be giving you all the annual report for the ASA restoration project. So it will include an overview of the excavation and restoration of the tombs of the Kushite nobles. He's also going to highlight some discoveries and the progress that has been made during the past 15 years of this endeavor. He's also going to share a little bit about his latest publication, the revision and expanded edition of Finding Karakhamun, the collaborative rediscovery of a lost tomb. So I encourage you all to stick in. This is a man who truly doesn't need an introduction, but I'm sure if you hear, a little bit of something about Anthony Browder. So without further ado, I would like to bring on the stage one of my favorite person in the world, my Juggernaut, my hero, my father, Anthony Browder.
Thank you, Atlantis, for the introduction. And thank you, too, for stepping in for Adra, who has to do some extra work this evening. So she's not able to be here. And I'm blessed and fortunate and pleased that my daughter, Atlantis, is here to sit in for her and take over the duties. It's critically important to have reliable people by your side so that if one person is unable to complete a specific task, someone else who is capable and competent can step in, take over, and we can keep things moving. That's a sign of progress. That's a sign of success. And I'm grateful to be surrounded by competent people who I know, love, and trust, and who do me proud. So I'm very pleased to be with you this evening. This is our 15th update on the activities of the ASA Restoration Project. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the ASA Restoration Project, this was a project that was created 16 years ago this Saturday. It was created specifically as a way to honor a man who was near and dear to my heart and to the hearts of educators and historians and lovers of African truths all over the world, and that was Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III. The opportunity came to me to be able to honor this man by establishing this excavation project and raising funds under the auspices of the ASA Restoration Project in order to facilitate the excavation, conservation, and restoration of what was initially 3 25th dynasty tombs, 3 tombs of Kushite nobles on the west bank of Luxor, Egypt, in an area known as South Asasif. So every year, I do an update to talk about what we've done to give you an idea of where we're going next, so that those who have contributed to this project and help make all of this work possible will see where their investment has been going. So tonight is no different. We'll be talking about some things that we've talked about in the past. We'll be giving you updates on things that we have discussed in the past. And we also will be telling you about some new things that are happening now and will be happening in the foreseeable future. So in every instance, one of my favorite mediums for conveying information, telling stories, teaching history is through the use of visuals. And one of the best means of doing so on a Zoom platform is a PowerPoint. So let me segue to my PowerPoint, begin my screen share, set everything up so that we can begin. And okay, there we go. So everyone can see the title slide. This is our 2024 presentation to the community with an update on the activities of the ASA Restoration Project. And I'm going to do something a little different tonight. I'm going to start tonight's program with a brief commercial. I don't think we've done commercials before, but I have a short commercial, less than a minute, that I think is apropos to the topic for this evening. So let's run the commercial. And on September 21st, at the grand reception and celebration of the ASA Restoration Project, you will see history come alive. You will learn about excavations, restorations, and discoveries. You'll meet Tony Browder, Charles Finch, and other special guests. You'll see 1,000 replicas from the tomb of King Tut in a private setting. You'll experience Egypt on the Potomac like you've never seen it before. You will remember the 21st night of September. Get your tickets now for this unforgettable occasion. As everyone knows, I love Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I think it's most appropriate that our grand event this Saturday happens to fall on the 21st of September. And I guarantee you that you will remember the 21st night of September. We've got some very special plans for you. It will rock your world. So just to let you know, Friday's event at the Thurgood Marshall Center is sold out. We have limited seating at the Thurgood Marshall Center. Friday's event is sold out. I repeat, so don't come to the door hoping to get in. We have no space. There is no room in the end. What you can do, what we have planned for, is to live stream that event. So you can go to, well, I'll share with you details on how you can live stream Friday's events and have an opportunity to see Charles Finch and I in what I'm sure will be an unforgettable evening of conversation between two brothers who have grown closer over the years, but more specifically, we've grown closer over the last week specifically. Friday's going to be fun. I'm telling you now, Friday is going to be fun, and you will want to be there. So let's begin with tonight's presentation. We've got a lot to talk about, and I certainly want to leave time for your questions and trust that we will have time to answer as many of your questions as possible. This image here is one that I will explain in more detail later on in my presentation, but it speaks to one of the most profound discoveries that we've made over the last 15 years, and that is the discovery of the temple tombs in South Asia, the temple tombs of Kushite nobles. And the nobles that we are commemorating are Karakhamun, Karakhamun's brother, Harold Marquette, is a nice addition to this family celebration. We also will be acknowledging the temple tomb of Karabashkin, and we're very pleased to be able to associate a name with the occupant of the third tomb, who for the past 3 years has been nameless, but we have discovered his name. His name is Nezbanejed, and all 4 of these brothers, whose images you see here on your screen, are all Kushite noblemen who were priests of Amen and worked at Karnak Temple, the largest religious complex ever built by humans on the planet. My mind is constantly processing this fact that these men whose tombs we have excavated and have restored by and large worked on the east bank of the Nile River and chose to be buried on the west bank as West Bank of Kemet, as opposed to being buried in the country of their birth, Kush. That says a lot about their appreciation of the work that they did in Waset and how they chose to be buried where they conducted their life's work. So let's get into it. I'm often asked how I got started in this endeavor. And one of the major turning points in my realizing that I wanted to devote my time and my life here on Earth to studying and talking about Nile Valley history, this idea was cemented in my consciousness at the Nile Valley Conference, which was held in King's Chapel on the campus of Morehouse College, September 26th through the 30th in 1984. I sat in the audience, a young whippersnapper, not knowing much about anything, but I was amazed as I saw Charles Finch and Ivan Van Sertima, Asa Hilliard, Naim Akbar, Hunter Adams, Runoko Rashidi, LeGrand Clegg, Bruce Williams, and a host of scholars, some of whom were Egyptologists, others were psychologists, historians, physicians, linguists, physicists, attorneys, mathematicians, Egyptologists, and all of these individuals brought to this conference, one, a love for Egypt, two, an interpretation of ancient Egyptian history and culture that was anchored by their interest in their chosen profession. So the mathematician talked about math in the Nile Valley from a specific heartfelt position. The psychologist, Naim Akbar, talked about the mind of Egypt, the psychology of the people of Kemet. Asa Hilliard, an educational psychologist, talked about education in the Nile Valley. Van Sertima and Finch talked about medicine in the Nile Valley. So all of these scholars, brilliant scholars, brought their own personal understanding of aspects of life to this interpretation of Nile Valley civilization. And they all were in agreement that Nile Valley civilization was an indigenous African civilization. And they presented pieces of evidence, one after another, to reinforce this reality. And it's sad, it's a sad statement of the times in which we're living, that 40 years after that event, gosh, it's been 40 years, 40 years after that event, there are still people on the planet today who are debating and arguing as to whether or not the founders of ancient Kemet, the people responsible for establishing the four golden ages of Kemet, were in fact indigenous African people. It's an argument that was settled 50 years ago at the Cairo Symposium, where Sheikh Diop and Teofilo Obenga presented irrefutable evidence to resolve that issue once and for all. But this evidence was moved off the table. It was forgotten so that these distractions that serve no genuine purpose other than promoting lies, other than protecting fragile egos. These lies are still being passed off as historical truth. So I, thank God for these courageous men and women who established the Nile Valley Conference and impressed a young person such as myself. And I saw, sitting in the audience, I saw what I wanted to do with my life. And 40 years later, I'm proud to say that this conference has influenced the creation of the ASA Restoration Project and all the things that have come from it and will continue to come from it. So moving forward, this coming weekend, we're going to be celebrating the 16th birthday, the 16th anniversary of the ASA Restoration Project. And we've got 2 days of events where we'll be talking about why Nile Valley civilization is important, why it's significant that we connect Kemet to Kush, Kemet and Kush to Ethiopia, Kemet, Kush, and Ethiopia to the Nile Valley, and the cultures which came from inner Africa, which helped to lead to the development of all the civilizations along the Nile Valley, with Kemet or Egypt being the one civilization that most people talk about, but Egypt or Kemet would be nothing without Kush. Kush would be nothing without Ethiopia. So it's critically important. I cannot overemphasize the fact that we cannot look at Kemet or Egypt in isolation. It is an integral part of Nile Valley civilization. And when we connect all of these threads together, we'll have a greater understanding of this African civilization, its contributions to the continent of Africa, and its contributions to the world. So we'll be celebrating this endeavor this Friday and Saturday. And I also will have an opportunity to share my latest book. It's a revision of the book that I published in 2011. Finding Karakhamun was a book that documented the first what 4 years of the ASA restoration project. So this revised version of Finding Karakhamun, this revised and expanded edition of Finding Karakhamun, covers our activities from 2008 to the present moment. It covers 15 years and gives you a broad perspective of what we've done, how we've done it, and what's coming next, the next chapter of the ASA Restoration Project. Another thing that I'm proud of with this publication is that I've had an opportunity to add detailed information about my discovery of the Sankofa symbol in 2 tombs in North ASA. I've documented that discovery, and I unpacked its relationship to Nile Valley civilization in addition to Niger River Valley civilization. That discovery has opened so many doors, so much so that I made a new discovery last Friday, on Friday the 13th. A brother by the name of Priest Amin had shared something that he discovered as a result of being inspired by my discovery of the Sankofa symbol. He found he found a new discovery that I was able yesterday to add to my book. It's being printed. It was printed yesterday. It's being bound now. So I was actually able to add one page, which takes this book into another level. I mean, it just elevated the essence of what this story is all about, of finding Karakhamun. And in the process of finding Karakhamun, I found myself. And in the process of finding myself, I've also found a way to lead others to seeing, finding, discovering their selves. And we can collectively grow as a result of knowing our roots. Gosh, I mean, I'm really excited about this, and I think you'll love this book. Another big plus is that the book is all in color. I have some phenomenal color photographs throughout the entire book, which help to illustrate the narrative and provide a right hemisphere oriented perception of the text that's in the book. So you'll love it. And the book will be available this weekend at both of our events. You'll hear more about that very soon. So moving along, let's talk about the area where we're excavating. We're excavating in an area known as South Asasif, where about 50, 60 years ago, probably longer than that, there was a village. And this village sits at the foothills of the Asasif Mountains. And it's across the street from the Ramesseum, the mortuary temple that was built for King Ramesses II. And you'll notice houses here where the village of Qurna was. You'll also notice a string of houses all along this area, moving from the left of your screen to the right of your screen. All of these homes were built over tombs. And what has been the state of play in Egypt for well over 200 years is that the residents of Egypt, of Luxor specifically, build their homes over areas where they suspect tombs may be. And once their homes have been constructed, then they dig underneath their homes in the hopes of finding tombs, striking gold, so to speak. And if they find a tomb, the occupant of that home or the residents of the village will raid the tomb and sell the contents of the tomb, the gold, the jewelry, the various items, pieces of body parts. If the tomb happens to be a magnificently carved tomb, they'll take pieces of the carvings, images, or glyphs and sell them to tourists. So this village has been there for quite some time. And typically, everybody in the village is related to each other. They're cousins, husbands, wives. So they all work collaboratively to search for tombs and to share the proceeds from the sale of the items that they have discovered. Here's a closer shot of the village where we've been doing our work for the past 15 years. And here's a ground level view of the village. People live there, they work there, they get married there, they die there. Multiple generations have lived in this area. And when they find a tomb, and I'll speak specifically about Karakhamun's tomb. When they found Karakhamun's tomb, they carved pieces of the walls and the pillars and the pilasters. They carved them out of the wall. Some they just broke in small pieces. Some pieces they used to build the foundations of their homes because these materials had no value to them, no value whatsoever. They did not see themselves as being a part of this ancient culture. Some items, particularly images of personalities. This is an image of Karakhamun that was broken into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And some of these pieces were sold to art dealers, sold to museum collectors, sold to private collectors, sold to tourists who brought them back home to Europe, to America, to South America, who have them in their private collections. There are tens of thousands of artifacts that have been stolen, taken out of Africa, taken out of Kemet, and have been carted all over the world. These images come from Karakhamun's tomb, and you can see how magnificently carved they are. Such great detail, such great craftsmanship has really engendered this tomb to me, this project to me, because I'm trained as an artist myself, and my first interest in Kemet was initiated 47 years ago when I saw the King Tut exhibit here in Washington, D.C. Not knowing anything at all about the history of Kemet, I went to see that exhibition through the eyes of an artist. And I was fascinated with what I saw. It was only after I met Van Sertima in February of 1977, and Van Sertima informed the audience that Egypt was an African civilization, an indigenous African civilization. It was only then that I learned that the ancient Egyptians were Black. And then I went back to see the King Tut exhibition again, this time armed with the knowledge that was given to me by Ivan Van Sertima. I saw an entirely different exhibition. I could see myself in the reflection of the mask of this boy king. I could see and feel the spirit of the craftspersons who created his tomb, who created the thousands of artifacts that were in his tomb. There was over 5,300 artifacts that were placed in the tomb of this boy king when he died at the age of 18 or 19. We'll get into that later. But we began our excavations with the ASA Restoration Project, digging in a hole because the tomb, the ceiling of the tomb had collapsed around 1990, and the tomb was filled with flood debris, it was filled with sand, and ultimately it was filled with garbage. So all of this debris had to be removed. We hired dozens and dozens of workers who dug dozens of feet into the earth, carrying fragments, buckets of dirt out of the site, dumping them in a hill, and then coming down to get another bucket. We found fragments. We began the process of restoring or rebuilding Karakhamun's tomb. So we had a worker, our stone cutter, cutting blocks of stone to certain specifications, and then those blocks of stone were brought down into the tomb and used to rebuild Karakhamun's tomb. So we did excavation. we did conservations of the things that we found. You conserve something by consolidating the wood to the stone, rather the limestone, to prevent it from crumbling, to preserve this structure that is approximately 2,700 years old. And then after everything has been conserved, after it's safe for us and the workers to move about, we begin the tedious process of rebuilding everything. So I'm going to show you this evening what we have done with your help, with your assistance. Here's an aerial photograph that was taken from a hot air balloon in the summer of 2013. This photograph was taken by our own Michael Brown, who is a phenomenal artist here in Washington, D.C. You are familiar with Michael's work if you have a copy of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, my second book. Michael Brown did the painting that graces the cover of that publication. So he was with us for a couple of seasons working at the site. He just happened to take a hot air balloon ride one morning, and his balloon just happened to drift over our site, and he took this incredible photograph, the only aerial photograph that we have at our site. And this photograph is so meaningful to me because it shows you the three major tombs that we're working on. In the upper right is the courtyard of the tomb of Nesbet-Nedjed. Here in the center is Karakhamun's temple tomb. And in the lower left, we have Karabashkin's sun court. So each tomb is comprised of three major components. I'll use Karakhamun's tomb as an example. And one of the reasons why we can see Karakhamun's tomb so clearly is because the roof of his tomb collapsed, and we can now peer into the tomb itself. Here is the staircase leading you some 22, 23 feet under the ground into the space that was carved and ultimately became Karakhamun's tomb. And in this area here, there's a room, a vestibule that has some wonderfully painted images. And at the end of the vestibule, moving from the east to the west, you entered a sun court or an atrium. This was open to the air. So you can see here the atrium or sun court of Nesbet-Nedjed. You can see here the atrium or sun court of Karabashkin. So this was a typical feature of a Kushite tomb. And then you had another vestibule which led to a door which allowed you to enter into the tomb itself. Now, because Karakhamun's ceiling is destroyed, we can look inside of his tomb in the first pillared hall and see the stumps of the four pillars on the east side of his tomb, the stumps of the four pillars on the north side of his tomb. Here's another vestibule that leads into the second pillared hall, where there are now four pillars, stumps of four pillars. I'll show you images that show you these locations with more detail and their restoration. But to give you an example of what you're looking at, here, because the roof collapsed, we can see inside of Karakhamun's tomb. This is the sun court of Nesbet-Nedjed, and so there would be a vestibule here, and then right about in this area, there would be a door which will lead to his pillared hall. So his underground tomb is in this area, and I believe Nesbet-Nedjed's tomb is considerably smaller than Karakhamun's, so it had, I think, a two-pillared hall with an entrance to a burial chamber on the side. So the side entrance to his burial chamber is right about here. And then it goes about another 10 feet underground and leads to his burial compartment. But we focus primarily on Karakhamun's tomb because it is the largest of the Kushite tombs. It is the most decorated of the Kushite tombs. Karakhamun's tomb measures 250 feet long from the staircase to the western wall. It is 36 feet wide from wall to wall, from the northern wall to the second wall, and it is 21 feet deep. It is carved out of the living limestone bedrock. So the creation of all of these tombs is not architecture, it's sculpture, right? It's sculpture. You're removing limestone, leaving behind the floor, ceiling, walls, pillars, pilasters, which were all incredibly carved and painted. And to give you a sense of scale, here is a person walking here. Here are several people at our registration tent. Here's someone here. Here's a group of people here. And here's a motorcycle and some other people moving about. So this is a vast space. I'd like to also add that in 2009, once we were able to prove to the Egyptian government that this was an active archaeological site, then the Egyptian government demolished all of the homes that were here so that we would have unfettered access to these three tombs, and that this unfettered access would give us an opportunity to discover other tombs that are also at this site. Just to give you an idea of what you're looking at three basic tombs. We discovered later that there was another tomb here, and we found over 24 tombs all around these three major tombs. There are tombs everywhere at this site. But moving forward, here's a photograph that was taken in 2010. What this photograph shows you is the completely excavated first pillared hall, the vestibule that connects the first pillared hall to the second pillared hall, and you see our workers in the early stages of excavating the second pillared hall. This photograph was taken in July of 2010. So you see two guys working down here. They are actually on the ground level, and about 4 or 5 feet above them is another set of workers removing debris in an area above the ground level. And then you see workers here about, I'd say 6 to 7 feet above this level, removing debris. So we have ladders here. We have platforms here that the workers use to go from one level to another to remove the debris that is put in these baskets and that the workers carry up the ramps to ground level, dump them at a site, and then they come back to the excavation site to take another basket full of debris up. So they do this all day long, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week in the blazing hot sun. So it's very tedious work. And we've been blessed to have a remarkable team working with us, a wonderful team of conservators and volunteers who help us at the site. But the process is that as they're excavating, we find fragments, pieces of the floor, pieces of the pillars, pieces of the pilasters, pieces of the ceiling, pieces of the walls, and all of this debris. So the guys here are looking for fragments, and every fragment they find, they put to the side. These are all fragments that were found, pieces of Karakhamun's tomb. And these fragments are then labeled, they're cleaned, they're recorded, and they're placed in storage for us to ultimately use to rebuild Karakhamun's tomb. So here are fragments from the ceiling on the floor. Here we have mud bricks that are now covering up the stumps of the pillars so that they aren't damaged as workers move throughout this area. And then here we see the workers excavating in the second pillared hall of Karakhamun's tomb. In the process of excavating Karakhamun's tomb, we have removed over 2,700 tons of debris. And in the process of excavating, we have found over 34,000 fragments, pieces as small as my thumb to pieces as large as an automobile. And every single fragment has to be accounted for. So it's very tedious work. This arrow is pointing to the fourth pillar on the north side of the first pillared hall in Karakhamun's tomb. I'm going to share with you some slides which illustrate the reconstruction of one pillar. This photograph was taken about 2012. After this was around 2012 or 2011. So here our workers are beginning the process of consolidating this fragment of a pillar so that they can now take blocks of limestone that are stone cutter cut and place those blocks to stack up or build up this pillar to its original height. And here is a photograph of this same pillar. The fourth pillar on the north side of the first pillared hall has been rebuilt to its original height of 10 feet, right? And then once the pillar is rebuilt with new limestone, new Egyptian limestone, we are one of the only excavation sites in all of Egypt that uses Egyptian materials in restoring a tomb. We use real Egyptian limestone cut to the conservators' specifications, and then place block on top of block. And then once it's restored to its original height, we then take the fragments that we found and then insert the fragments into their proper place in the pillars. So all of these colored images, all these images with metal netcher are fragments that we found that have been inserted into freshly cut limestone. So here you see this area here, this cutout. This cutout is going to be filled with the fragment that has been found to contain pieces of hieroglyphic text that fit within that particular location. So because of the fact we know what the text says on each side of the four pillars, we can begin the process of reconstructing the fragments in a sandbox, laying them on the ground, and then gluing the fragments together in order to reposition them in their proper place on each side of each pillar. So this one particular side, and this is the south side of pillar number 4. This one particular pillar, this one particular side of this particular pillar has well over 100 fragments, 100 pieces of a puzzle that have been glued together in order to reconstruct this one side of this one pillar. And we did this for 8 pillars in Karakhamun's first pillared hall. We did it for the 4 pillars in the second pillared hall. So these are some of the conservators who have worked with us over the years. Here they are registering fragments. So here you see Brother Kalechi, the president of Appeal, is examining a fragment. Each fragment has to be cleaned. It has to be numbered. It has to be registered. It has to be, we have to have, as part of the registration, we have to have a drawing of the specific characteristics of this particular fragment, and if there's any glyphs on it, and then it has to be photographed. Then that information has to be put into a computer database, and then the fragment is placed in storage where it would later be used to rebuild Karakhamun's tomb. So it's a very tedious, time-consuming process. We've had hundreds of volunteers over the decades who have assisted us, and we could not have done this work without people who sacrificed their time, their talent, and their treasure. We worked hard, and when the opportunity presented itself, we took time off to explore the site, to play a little bit at the site, to document our presence there. So I'm so, proud of everyone who worked with us and contributed to the excavation and the reconstruction of these 25th Dynasty tombs. This is the first time in history this work has ever been done on this scale. This is the first time in history that African Americans have been involved in this work at this scale. It's never happened before. And this photograph in your lower left is a picture taken with myself and my conservators. These are guys who had special training um, to rebuild temples, to rebuild tombs. Some talented guys. And the brother that's standing right behind me with his hand on my right shoulder passed, I guess, about 5 years into the project. We've lost several guys who have passed. And we miss them dearly. We've come to appreciate these brothers as our brothers. They looked out for us. They invited us to our homes. Their wives fed us dinner. And they cared for us like we were family, which in fact we have grown to be over these past 15 years. Wonderful guys, wonderful people, and we could not have done this work without them. Many hands made this work possible. So here's another photograph of the first and partially excavated second pillared hall. Photograph was taken in July of 2010. And I want to show you the aerial view of this site. And I've got some arrows here that indicate what you're looking at. So this was 2010. This was before we excavated this area behind here that led to the vestibule, that led to the open air sun court, that led to a second vestibule, that led to the staircase. We didn't excavate all of this until 2011 and 2012. So by 2012, we finally were able to access Karakhamun's tomb through the original staircase. It was probably the first time in 2,000 years that the staircase had been used. So this arrow points to this point here in the aerial photograph, and the arrow here points to the end of Karakhamun's tomb. So this space is the first and second pillared hall in Karakhamun's tomb. Here's what makes me so proud of our work. This is a photograph of the restored first pillared hall with all 8 of the pillars completely restored, with a temporary roof, which we put in place, I think around 2019. I have a slide that will give you specific dates. So we rebuilt the pillars, we rebuilt the pilasters at the vestibule, which connects the first pillared hall to the second pillared hall. And so here's a photograph of what it looked like in 2010. And now you can see what it looks like today. All right. This is the work of the ASA Restoration Project. This is what our contributions have produced. This is a photograph of the restored second pillared hall. So there are 4 pillars in the second pillared hall. Here is the western wall, the end of the second pillared hall, the end of Karakhamun's tomb. And what I'm really so excited to have said that we've done is we rebuilt the western wall of Karakhamun's tomb, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's a photograph of what this area looked like in 2010, and you can see in the background what it looks like today. And here is one of my proudest accomplishments, rebuilding the spirit door in the western wall of Karakhamun's temple tomb. This is the focal point of Karakhamun's tomb. This lies along the central axis. This was a statue of a Tsar, a smaller than life-size statue of a Tsar. We found his body broken into 1, 2, 3 parts. We found his crown, the white crown. We have not found his face. I am certain that his face is probably in someone's private collection somewhere in Europe. I would bet $1 million on that. And we'll never find it, but at least we have the body of a Tsar. At least we've been able to create the spirit door. And to again show you the work, here's an aerial shot that was made around 2011 to show you the partially completed first pillared hall. First pillar, 4th pillar in the first pillared hall. And then here's what that same area looked like in 2019 when we rebuilt all 12 pillars in the first and second pillared hall, all 6 pilasters, and then we install a temporary roof in order to protect our work during the 4 months of the year when we're not there. We've got priceless works of art in Karakhamun's tomb. And these flaps here are windows, if you will, to allow fresh air and some sunlight into this space so that our workers could work at ease, so that they can see what they're doing. And the benefit of creating this roof is that it lowered the temperature inside of his tomb by about 15 to 20 degrees. So if you can imagine working at this site during the summer months, the temperature averages, I'd say, about 110, 115, 117 degrees. But in the shade of the first or second pillared hall, it's closer to 90 degrees. And if there's a breeze, it might be 87 degrees. So we work in some extreme conditions, but we work and we get it done, and you can see the fruits of our labor. Want to move to another tomb at the site. This is actually the pillared hall of the tomb of Karabashkin. This tomb was the first tomb built in this area. And you can see here there were 4 pillars, but you see that the pillars are in terrible shape. Why are they in terrible shape? They're in terrible shape because the residents of the village use Karabashkin's pillars as a quarry. They broke off pieces of limestone to build their houses, to build the foundations of their houses. Now, I'm not kidding. You know, this is what they did. We found evidence of the desecration of these tombs. And for me personally, the desecration of these tombs could only mean that the people who lived here did not respect these tombs because these were not their people. These were not their ancestors. They would not desecrate a Muslim tomb. They would not desecrate the tombs of people that they knew and respected. These were ancient inhabitants. These were Cushites. These were Kemites. These were indigenous African people who are not connected to the current inhabitants of this land. That is a historical fact. I'm not disparaging anyone. I'm just telling a basic and fundamental historical fact. So this is what Karabashkin's tomb looked like. And because of the fact that it had never been completed, there were no carvings on the walls of his tomb, which meant that Karabashkin died before it was completed. And as a result, all work stopped when a person died because the person had to be buried within 70 days of their death. So because this tomb was unfinished, we used this as a storage facility for the 34,000 fragments we found in Karakhamun's tomb. We were able to lay them out on the floor in certain order based on the area where they were found so that we can use these fragments to begin the process of restoring the various pieces of Karakhamun's tomb. This is what the site looked like in 2006 when it was first discovered by my colleague Alina Pistakova, and this is what it looked like in 2017 when we excavated down to the floor level. And as we excavated down to the floor level, we found rooms off to the side of his tomb that we didn't know existed. And we found objects in those tombs, in those rooms off to the side. At the end of Karabashkin's tomb, we expected to find a shaft that would lead to his burial chamber, but to our surprise, we found a ramp that descended and led to his burial chamber, a relatively small burial chamber. And at the end of the burial chamber, inside the burial chamber, we found a sarcophagus, which literally blew our minds. The sarcophagus is huge. The sarcophagus is made of rose granite that was quarried from the rose granite quarries in Aswan, which is approximately 130 miles to the south. Rose granite is a stone that is reserved for royalty. So, because we don't know very much about Karabashkin, we have his tomb. We don't have any inscriptions in his tomb, but we found this rose granite sarcophagus, which implies that Karabashkin was probably a member of the royal family. It is a huge sarcophagus, which is 12 feet long. It is 6 feet high. It is 5 feet wide, and it weighs 10 tons or 20,000 pounds. I don't know how they cut it. I don't know how they transported it from Aswan to Luxor. I don't know how they got it down the staircase of his tomb. I don't know how they got it down the ramp, but we have the physical evidence of its location in his tomb. Unfortunately, Karabashkin's tomb, like Karakhamun's tomb, like Nezbenedjed's tomb, was robbed at some point in time in history. Probably the latest robberies occurred during the time that the village was created over this site. The top of his sarcophagus was moved to the side. A hole was cut off on the left-hand side, a very small hole, a hole large enough for a child, 10, 12-year-old child, to crawl inside and strip the wrappings off the mummy so that whatever gold, whatever jewelry, whatever papyri, whatever artifacts were buried inside of the sarcophagus are long gone. So all we've been able to do at this site is pick up the pieces, pick up the fragments that the tomb robbers, the tomb raiders left behind, that they dropped, that they lost. All we have are fragments. And with these fragments, we've been able to reconstruct a powerful narrative of a people who have been lost to time and space. In 2019, we made an important discovery as we were excavating the Sun Court of Nezbenedjed. We actually found his name. We had attributed Nezbenedjed's tomb to a person of the 26th dynasty, a woman by the name of Itieru. Why do we do that? Because she had usurped his tomb, and all of these tombs were usurped. All of these tombs were taken over by members of the 26th dynasty and later dynasties. These tombs were usurped by Greeks. They were usurped by Romans. They were usurped by Coptic priests. And then they were usurped by Arabs. So these tombs have been used, misused, and abused for over 2,000 years. But when we were excavating in the courtyard of this tomb, we found an area where Itieru's name had been plastered over the name of the original occupant of the tomb, and the plaster had fallen off, and we found the name of this occupant of this tomb. His name is Nezbenedjed, and right near his name, we found this object lying on the floor. It is a pyramidion, or a capstone to a pyramid, which may have been located above ground behind his burial chamber. So this was an important discovery. The only pyramid object we found at our site, which indicated that these sites, these Kushite tombs, were probably similar in construction to the Kushite tombs that were built in Merowe, in Kush, hundreds of miles to the south of Sept. So we were able to feature this pyramidion in an exhibition we did at the Luxor Museum, which opened on the 12th of December in 2020. This exhibition was part of the 40th anniversary of the opening of the Luxor Museum. We were the keynote presentation, and it was a very special affair. The year prior to that, we had a special exhibition in the same Luxor Museum where we displayed over 100 artifacts that we found at the site over the decades. These artifacts were in a specially designed staircase, a display case, which are behind me. I am talking with a group of people who had traveled to Egypt on one of our study tours. I believe this is around 2018 or 2019, this particular study tour. So we would always take our groups to the Luxor Museum so that they can see the sites that our team was responsible for excavating. We go to the other museums to see what other people, other missions have excavated. So now we're able to show visitors what we have done. I mean, it's incredible. Here is our last exhibition, which was done December of 2020. And this was our display of the Pyramidion. I, take great pride in sharing with you that I designed this exhibition. The idea was to create a plexiglass pyramid that we could place the Pyramidion on top of so that you can have an idea of what this structure may have looked like. This is a miniaturized pyramid. We couldn't fit it in this space, but it's just to give you a feel for what this structure originally looked like. And in this location, we have 4 pictures on the wall of each of the 4 sides of this Pyramidion. And each of the side tells a story of the soul's journey in the afterworld before they come forth by day and their soul is reborn. I mean, there's so much history. There's so much culture. There's so much science. There's so much philosophy. There's so much spirituality embedded in all of this. And I've been blessed to have been there firsthand, to have seen these things, to be present at discoveries, to study these objects, to piece together these fragments in my mind and understand what all of this means. So as I begin to wrap up and put the pieces of this story together, what I can show you is our reconstructive narrative of these Kushite priests who were buried on the west bank of Luxor. These priests worked on the east bank of Luxor in a town that was originally known as Sept. Sept is a word, Kemetic word that means the scepters. And they worked at this building, which was known as Ipet-Isut, which means the most select of places. In other words, this is heaven on earth. This temple complex is the largest religious complex ever built by human beings on the planet. When the Greeks came here several hundred years after the Kushite nobles worked, they referred to this as a temple of 1,000 gates. There were 1,000 by the Greeks' estimation. There were 1,000 entrances to this temple complex. Now, of course, they were exaggerating, but it speaks to the majesty of this site. And these priests, Karakhamun, his brother, Haramaket, Karabashkin, and Nezbanejed, these priests worked at this site. We know from the narrative that we've been able to piece together that Karabashkin was the mayor of Waset, that he was an architect, and he probably oversaw the reconstruction of these temples and these tombs at this site. We know that Karakhamun was an Ak priest, and as an Ak priest, his job, his duty was to say the words every morning as he led a procession of priests and priestesses down the central axis of Ipet-Isut towards the Holy of Holies, where the shrine of Amen, the unseen presence of God, resided. And it was Karakhamun whose duty it was to say the words, to bring forth the presence of the unseen presence of God, Amen. Amen is a Kemetic word that means hidden or concealed. Amen represents the unseen presence of God, or the unseen presence of the sun, the symbol of God, when it disappeared in the west, when it set below the horizon and made its journey through the underworld before it was resurrected in the morning when it rose in the east. So it was Karakhamun's job to say the words, to call forth the Spirit of God every morning so that his spirit could inhabit his Holy of Holies, which was referred to in ancient times as the ancestors' room. So Amen was viewed as an ancestor to us all. He said these words, and then it was understood that once the presence of God filled his temple, then that spirit would literally inspire the 83,000 priests and priestesses who worked at this site every single day. We also know that Haram Akhet, Karakhamun's baby brother, was at some point in time the chief priest at Ipet-Isut, the chief priest at Karnak Temple. So he oversaw all of the activities at this site. His statue currently stands in the Nubia Museum in Aswan. His statue is made of rose granite, the same sacred piece of quartz crystal that was used by Karabashkin as his final resting place. And the same stone, rose granite, is used as the threshold as one crosses into sacred zones inside of this temple complex and inside of many temples and tombs throughout all of Kemet. So there's some special quality about rose granite. There's something about the vibration of the stone. There's something about the color of this stone that made it a unique piece of material to use in order to designate when one was moving into a zone of higher spiritual significance, of higher vibration. So there's so many parts to this story that we can recreate. And here's a photograph that shows you the temple tombs that were built in Merowe. I would guesstimate probably about almost 1,000 miles to the south of Ipet-Isut, to the south of Waset. So these were the temple tombs of the Kushite nobles. So rather than being buried in their homeland, these Kushite nobles chose to be buried on the west bank of Waset. So this drawing here is a recreation of what we believe the three major tombs, Kushite tombs of South Asasif look like. Now, when we were excavating the superstructure, the ground level of these tombs, we found the footprint of pylons. This structure here, this wall here, is a pylon. And pylons are found at the entrances to temples. So the discovery of a pylon at the entrance to Karakhamun's tomb meant that this was more than a tomb, this was a temple tomb, right? So a temple tomb changes the whole dynamic of this site. A tomb is where a person is buried. A person's body is put in a tomb, in a burial chamber inside of a tomb. But a temple is a place where one comes to engage in spiritual activities, religious activities. So this is where the body buried in the tomb was sanctified, was glorified, and priests, priestesses, and members of the family of the departed could come to this site to offer special prayers, to pour libations, to commune with the spirit of their ancestors. So the presence of a temple tomb changes the whole dynamic of this site. So this is no longer a necropolis. This is a sanctuary. These Kushite tombs makes this Kushite necropolis a sanctuary, sacred ground, where specific spiritual activities were conducted for hundreds of years in order to sanctify and call forth the spirit of the ancestors, the Kushite ancestors who were buried at this site. I mean, I can't really describe in words the significance of this site and how much it means to me to know that we found this information and that we have restored these sites. So in 2013, on one of our study tours, our group members took this photograph as we were standing in front of a Sar in his spirit door, in his portal to the ancestral realm. And we were given a Sar, the Lord of the afterlife, the respect that he truly deserved, the respect that he had not received for over 2,000 years. I mean, this is how important this process is. This is more than an excavation. This is sacred work. And when you look at it in this context, it changes the significance of what we've done. It changes the significance of what we have the capacity to do, because there is a direct correlation. So we found, at last count, over 43 tombs of Kushite nobles, of Kushite relatives of the nobles, and others. This is probably the largest Kushite settlement, definitely in Sept, and possibly in all of Kemet. We know that there are probably dozens of tombs under the ground waiting to be excavated, waiting to be restored. So what I can tell you, based on my own personal experiences, is that every new tomb that we discovered, and I say new tomb because the tombs are old tombs, but they're new to us. Every tomb that we discovered allowed us to access a new ancestor, right? And in accessing each new ancestor, we poured libation. We called the names of these ancestors. We called the names of these ancient souls, and we participated in rituals that their Kushite descendants had engaged in for decades, decade after decade. So the purpose of these temple tombs was so that their ancestors could come and pour libation and call their names with the pouring out libations. And the understanding was, as you pour libation and call the names of these ancient souls, they would come forth by day. Now, this is real. You may not understand the significance of this. You may not truly appreciate the significance of this, but this is what these Africans in the Nile Valley understood to be a fact of life and afterlife. Here's a quote from the Book of Ani, which is a 19th dynasty papyrus. So in the 19th dynasty, during the time of Ramesses II, these Africans understood that you must pour libation for your father and your mother, who rest in the valley of the ancestors. The Neteru, the gods, if you will witness your action, and they will accept it. They will see that you are doing what you are supposed to do. They will not forget this. We were encouraged not to forget to pour libation to your ancestors, even when you're away from home. For as you do this and model these activities for your parents, your children will observe you, and they will ultimately do the same for you when their time comes. So that it has given me a different understanding of death. And I saw death not as an enemy. I saw death not as the end, but as a doorway to a new beginning, a doorway to a new life. And the purpose of that spirit door is that was the portal for the ancestors. The occupants of this tomb can move into that spirit door, and by pouring libations, by bringing offerings at that spirit door, you are engaging that ancestors to come back, to accept your offering of libation, to drink from the waters that you poured for them, to eat from the bread and the meal that you provided from them, and to sit and talk with you, right? To provide you comfort, to inspire you, give you ideas, give you protection, give you the strength and the wisdom to deal with problems. That was the relationship between the living and the ancestors. That was the relationship then. That is the relationship now. And that is the relationship that will continue to exist for all time. And when you understand this, the importance of maintaining these rituals, there is nothing that you cannot do. So the two books that I have referenced here, Libation by Kamani Nahusi, documents the process of libations from the Nile River Valley all the way across to the west coast of Africa to show you these are traditions that have been a part of African people, African history, African culture for over 10,000 years. These are the memories that I strive to recover. This is the history that we strive to rewrite and teach to everyone who is willing to receive this history, receive this knowledge so that we can be better at everything that we do. My dear friend, my brother Akhmi Rao wrote the book, Let the Ancestors Speak, Removing the Veil of Mysticism from Meta Nature. We have a tendency to misinterpret meta nature, to misinterpret some of these rituals, some of these practices, and some of this history. But what we need to understand is that these are human beings just like you and I. They dealt with some of the same problems that we deal with every single day of our lives, and they found solutions to those problems. And one of the solutions was found in realizing that we can't solve all of our problems ourselves. Our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, our cousins, our spouses, our brothers, our sisters, our uncles, our aunties, and other ancestors who are on the other side are waiting for us to acknowledge them, to pour libation and invite them to come and engage us in solving problems. So in that context, there's no problem that can't be solved. There's no problem that doesn't have a solution. And when you tap into this unlimited source of knowledge and power, there's nothing that you cannot do. And we have found the evidence of this reality. It's waiting for us to use. So as we did work at this site, we had the opportunity to travel to other sites, to visit other tombs, to visit other archaeological sites, and to learn from other people who were engaged in the same activities we were engaged in. On September the 28th, 2016, we visited a French site in North Asansef near the temple, the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut. We had an opportunity to visit this tomb, tomb TT33, Theban tomb 33, the tomb of a 25th dynasty priest by the name of Padi Amenepe. His tomb is the largest tomb in all of Egypt. Not the largest Kushite tomb, but the largest tomb of anybody in all of Egypt. It's bigger than the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. It's bigger than the tombs in the Valley of the Queens. It's bigger than the tombs in the Valley of the Nobles. It's a tomb that will never be open to the public. Trust me on this. There are things in that tomb that some folk don't want you to see. I was blessed to have gone in, 2 or 3 times, and my mind was blown. And I can share with you now one of the most important discoveries that I found on September the 28th as I walked into the vestibule of that tomb. And being the curious person that I am, I looked around, I looked at the walls, and I looked at the ceiling. And when I looked at the ceiling, I saw this image. And I said, oh my God, that is a precursor to the Akoma, the heart-shaped Sankofa symbol. So I began to just process things. I began to connect the dots. And I was fortunate to remember what Charles French had talked about at one of our Metamorphosis conferences that was held to commemorate the ASA Restoration Project. French gave a presentation about a book called Paths from the Nile that was written in the that was based on research that was done by a Senegalese scholar, I think either at the end of the 19th century or early 20th century, where he documented 6 migrations from Kush and Kemet, from the Nile River Valley to the west coast of Africa, to the Niger River Valley. So I'm now find a piece of evidence to validate these migrations that took place from the Nile to the Niger. And that prompted me to begin to do more research. And I can share with you something brand new, something, piece of evidence that was just presented to me last Friday, that I was fortunate to be able to add to my book. I called up Paul Coates, who is my printer, Black Classic Press, BCP Digital prints my books. I was able to call Paul and tell him to halt the presses, stop the presses, because I want to add a new page to the book that he was printing to share this new discovery. So let me lay it on you. We've got another piece of evidence to substantiate the migration of Sankofa symbols from the Nile to the Niger to your neighborhood. So let me share with you the pieces of this puzzle that are slowly forming right before our eyes, like the pieces of the puzzle that we put together that allowed us to restore Karakhamun's temple tomb. So here's a photograph of the Sankofa symbol that was found in Sept, on the west bank of Sept in Kemet, that was created around 700 BCE. In doing research on this find, I was able to trace the origin of this particular decorative form to Kerma in Kush around 1600 BCE. All of these details are in the revised version of Finding Karakhamun, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So I now found evidence of this symbol taking it back 800, 900 years to Kush. So I can prove now beyond a shadow of a doubt that this symbol is of Kushite origins, and it was brought into Kemet. And then on Friday the 13th, lucky Friday the 13th, brother Priest Amen, who also goes by the name of Brother Sankofa, showed me this image. And Monday, I got the book that this image is in, and reading the description of this find gave me more detail. So this piece of pottery was found in Karanag in Kush, in Lower Kush, and it's been dated to between 200 and 300 CE in the current era. So conservatively speaking, let's just say it was created around 250 CE in the current era, or 250 AD. What you're looking at here is the Sankofa bird, a bird looking backwards, another expression of the Sankofa symbol. So dig this. James Small, about 6 or 7 years ago, introduced me to this book of Sankofa symbols, or Adinkra symbols. This particular symbol was created around 1700 CE, and it's in Ivory Coast. It's the Akan people who live in Ivory Coast. So we see here the evolution of this Sankofa symbol that now exists on the west coast of Africa. Another piece of the puzzle that substantiates this migration of Africans from the Nile to the Niger. According to the book Paths from the Nile, there were 6 migrations that occurred between 650 BC and 550 AC or AD. Almost 1,000 years. Africans moved from east to west. They brought their knowledge from the east to the west to keep it from falling into the hands of invaders. And so what happened when that knowledge got to the west coast of Africa? They expanded on it. So we have the Akoma Sankofa symbol that I talked about earlier in Ghana. And we also have this Sankofa symbol. that was created from the staff of a linguist who works with a chief in Ghana. So we now have evidence of the creation of the Sankofa bird in Kush, in the Nile River Valley. This is phenomenal. So we know that between 15th century to the 19th century, Africans were stolen from the west coast of Africa and brought across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas. And here in America, we now use this same Sankofa symbol. So we can link the passage of knowledge, African knowledge, from the Nile to the Niger to your neighborhood. Now, this is real, folk. This is something that we need to be celebrating. This is something that we need to be able to articulate correctly, present the facts in chronological order. We don't need to make anything up because we've got the physical evidence to tell a story that's never been told. So we got to tell it right. And we have to share this story with our young so that they know who they are. And we can claim beyond a shadow of a doubt that our roots go back to the Nile Valley, to Kush, to Kemet, to Ethiopia, to Kenya, to Uganda. Those are our roots, our cultural roots. And I might add our genetic roots, because working with African ancestry, we've been able to prove a genetic link to the Nile Valley, found within the DNA of Africans living in America. So we've got the receipts, brothers and sisters, and there's more important work that's going to be coming. So what does all of this mean as I begin to wrap down so we can take some questions from you all? It means that there was a physical, mental, and spiritual migration from the Nile to the Niger, to the Hudson, to the Potomac, to the Mississippi, to rivers throughout the Americas, throughout the Caribbean, throughout Central America, and South America. We're connecting the dots, brothers and sisters. So it's also important to note here that the graves of over 400 Africans were found in Lower Manhattan in a site that is now known as the African Burial Ground. And the logo for the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan is the Sankofa symbol. We can trace this history, this culture, back to the Nile Valley, back to Kush, back to Kemet. This photograph on the left is a photograph that was taken by an incredible photographer by the name of Chester Higgins, who will grace us with his presence this Saturday at our special event Saturday evening. So we got lots of stuff happening. So as I wind down, I am clearer than I've ever been in my life, that libation and ancestral intelligence are our superpowers. They are the reason why we exist. That dwells within African people all over the world, this ancestral intelligence. And when we cultivate this AI, the only AI that matters to us, this African AI, and engage in activities that reconnect us with our ancestors, we pour libation, then we make it possible for these ancestors to speak to us, to move through us, to use us as vessels to continue their work. And so I can say categorically that ancestral intelligence is knowing that we carry the genetic memory of 10,000 times 10,000 ancestors within us. And that when we acknowledge them and invite them into our lives, they will come. Ancestral intelligence is knowing that our ancestors are the geniuses that reside in our genes, and that they are our strength, and they are our ever-present protectors. Ancestral intelligence is knowing that when we call on our ancestors, they must respond, they must come, because we are the reason that they exist. So to know that means that we have an obligation and a responsibility to remember them, to call on them, and to give them work. As our dear friend, Sister Sept, Dr. Pat Newton said, the ancestors are unemployed because too many of us don't know them. Too many of us are afraid of them. Too many of us don't know how to call them forth into our lives so that they can protect our babies. They can protect our grandbabies. They can protect us and those that we love. That's why they exist. And I submit to you, sisters and brothers, that the only reason that we are alive today, the only reason that we've not been wiped off the face of the earth because of 400 plus years of slavery, segregation, discrimination, lynchings, beatings, Jim Crow, and racism is because we have a power within us that has been protecting us. And it's now our responsibility to embrace that power, to acknowledge them, and allow them to protect us by like never before, to empower us like never before, and to prepare us for the work that must be done to save America and to save the world. Because we all know, based on wars that are happening in Gaza, wars that are happening in Ukraine and Russia right now, that America is the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet, and that the world is going to hell. And if the world is going to be saved, it's going to have to be new Africans in America, new Africans with a new consciousness of who they are and what they were born to do. People who are willing to step up, embrace your cultural identity, embrace the geniuses that you carry within your DNA, and dedicate your life to something bigger than yourself and do the work. We've got the best work team possible. So all we have to do is do what we need to do. So this weekend, we're going to be celebrating ancestors, acknowledging, Ancestor Asa Hilliard, acknowledging our Kushite ancestors, acknowledging our Kemetic ancestors, acknowledging our Nile Valley ancestors and our Niger River Valley ancestors, acknowledge our ancestors from Mississippi and the Potomac and the Hudson, or wherever we may have walked at any point in time in our lives. We're here because ancestors have sacrificed for us, ancestors known and unknown, and it's time to give them their due so that we could be empowered to do the work that needs to be done. So, our event on Friday evening is sold out. Don't come to the Thurgood Marshall Center on Friday expecting to get in, because you will be turned away. What I'm advising you to do is to live stream this event. If you don't have a ticket, take a screenshot, go to the website. Atlantis, make sure you put the URL in the chat so people can access that. Purchase your live stream ticket if you don't have one already, so that you can see Charles Finch and I chop it up like never before. We're going to have, as James Brown would say, we're going to have a funky good time. I'll just leave it at that. And then on Saturday, tickets are still available on Saturday. There's only a handful of tickets left. So you don't want to miss out on this event. Again, Atlantis, please put the URL in the chat so people can purchase their ticket. We're not selling tickets at the door because we need to have an accounting of the number of people who are going to be there. We're going to have a reception. We've got refreshments, and we want to be able to make sure that everyone who is present is able to partake of a little food, partake of a little refreshment, and then partake of the information that's going to be shared. So in order to know how much we need to have at the ready, we need to know how many people have purchased tickets. That's why I encourage folks to purchase their tickets in advance, because there's work that we have to do in order to serve you better. And I believe in serving the people who support us. So make our lives easier by purchasing tickets in advance in a timely manner so that we could do our job and service you well. So this event is going to be in East Washington. I'm not giving you the address because you got to purchase a ticket to know where to come. You'll get all the details when you purchase your ticket. What I want to do is to let you know that Friday evening and Saturday evening, Charles Finch and I will be available to discuss and autograph our books. Finch's latest book is called Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-Year History. In that book, he lays out these paths from the Nile, these 6 migrations from the Nile to the Niger. Plus, he gives a phenomenal interpretation uh, or explanation as to why he says Nile Valley civilization is a 10,000-year history. He lays all that historical information down, he brings it forward, and gives you a clear understanding of how the history of Kemet has intentionally been shortchanged. Understand what I'm telling you. The chronology of Kemet has been shortened in order to fit it within the time frame and the experiences of people who had nothing to do with it. But when we look at the long history of Kemet, we get an entirely different understanding and appreciation of what Africans did, indigenous Africans did in their own homeland. My new revised and expanded book of Finding Karakhamun will be available as well. Great pictures, great stories, 2 books that we want you to purchase. You'll have 2 opportunities on Friday and Saturday. So going back to Finch and I have known each other for 40 years. I met him at the Nile Valley Conference. We brought him here to Washington, D.C. on numerous occasions with Van Sertima, with Teofilo Binga. We've done presentations at UDC, at other venues throughout the city. And these photographs were taken around maybe 1989, 1990, in the home of one of our study group members. Whenever we brought a scholar to town, we would have hosted dinner at one of our homes, and our study group members would come and dine with our guests, and we would have extensive question and answer session. We would engage them in questions about our history and culture. So Finch and I go way back. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll be uncovering some new details about our lives, about our relationships, about our history, the history that we love, about the culture that we love. So those of you who will be present at the Thurgood Marshall Center on Friday will have an opportunity to see us live. Those of you who don't have tickets can buy a ticket to live stream this event and see us live in the comfort of your home. And then I encourage you all to come out on Saturday. You still have time to buy the few remaining tickets. We're going to be at this venue in Northeast Washington, D.C. And inside of this venue, you are going to see 10,000 replicas from the tomb of King Tut. These replicas look like the real thing. It's amazing. And some of these items will be displayed in this exhibition in the manner in which they were found in King Tut's tomb almost 102 years ago. Okay? You'll see his shrine. You'll be able to touch it. You can't do this in a museum, right? These are replicas. But you'll be able to touch them. You'll be able to revel in the glory of the craftsmanship. You'll be able to see his chariot, his gold leaf chariot. You'll be able to see his mask, his death mask. Now, this is a photograph of the replica. It looks like the real thing. And I'm telling you, folks, you haven't seen anything like this before. So we've got 4 exhibition halls that we will be able to walk through. We have the entire space to ourselves between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock on Saturday. That's why I tell you, you will remember the 21st of September. If you're there with us, your mind will be blown. Your socks will be knocked off. You'll have an opportunity to experience something that most people can only experience in Kemet, in Egypt. You'll be able to do it in Washington, D.C. So we're going to talk about details are in my new book, Finding Karakhamun. We'll talk about it briefly at Friday and Saturday's event. We'll talk about the next phase of the ASA Restoration Project as our work in Egypt comes to an end, because we are trusting that we will be able to open Karakhamun's tomb next year. And when we open the tomb, I can close the door on that chapter of 16 years of my life and begin to do more work here at home, sharing the knowledge that we've curated over the past 15, 16 years. Our first new project will be the John Henry Clark Enhanced History Project. It is slated to open on December the 7th, 2024. We'll give you details about this project in the coming weeks, and we will extend an invitation for you to come and reveal history being made again. We've done a video for this project that has been submitted for an annual competition. And several months ago, we were informed that we won 3 Telly Awards for the videotape that accompanies the John Henry Clark Enhanced History Project. A Telly Award is a statuette that is a symbol of excellence that is given for video and television production across all screens, television, um, digital media, cell phones. So this content will be made available come December, and you'll get to see history made again, because this is what we do. This is what the ASA Restoration Project does. We don't just talk about history, we make history. And also history will be made again come the first of next year when the 3rd volume of Browder File Essays will be published. It's called Why Kemet Matters. I'll lay out the history of Nile Valley culture and civilization. I will give you irrefutable evidence as to why it's an indigenous African civilization and why it matters to us, right? So that is coming. And what I'm doing for the summer of 2025, we're doing a special Why Kemet Matters tour. And what we're going to do with this tour, we're going to do, because of the fact that I know that Egypt is on the Potomac, I know that Egypt is in various parts of the world. We're going to do a special tour to London and Paris to visit Egypt on the Thames, Egypt on the Seine. We're going to do tours of London and Paris. We're going to visit the British Museum. We're going to visit the Louvre, and we're going to witness Egypt in other parts of the world, Egypt like you've never seen it before. Dr. Ben used to say, if you want to study Africa, go to Europe. Go to the European museums. The collections of Egyptian artifacts in the British Museum and the Louvre rival what you have seen in the Cairo Museum for all of these years, and it will rival what you will ultimately see in the new Grand Egyptian Museum when it opens. So we'll have the details on this study tour in a few weeks, but it's going to be something very special, something unlike anything we've ever done before. So we're taking our activities to the next level. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. I end by inviting you to come out to our activities this weekend, this Friday and Saturday. I want to end by thanking you for your support over these past 15, soon to be 16 years. We could not have done this work without your support, without your financial assistance, without your physical assistance. I am eternally grateful to everything that everyone has done to make this work possible. This work is not the work of Tony Browder. This is collective work that the community will benefit from. And I thank you all for being a part of this communal effort. I will stop my share. Atlantis, I will rely on you to open the chat and allow us to take some questions. Let me exit from my slide presentation and turn it back to you, dear daughter.
All right. Well, first and foremost, that was a wonderful presentation. And I don't know if you've been seeing some of the comments pop up, but
No,
folks
I can't.
you
I
have
can only do 5 things at a time. I can't do my presentation, think about what I'm going to say, edit out what I'm going to say. I can't do all of that and watch the chat. So I'll look at it later.
Okay, well, just know that you're receiving lots of love. Folks are excited about the work. We have a lot of folks who are new, but of course, we have those who have been with us for some while and just watching you progress. So thank you all for being here tonight, and we're going to do our best to get through as many questions as we can. We'll start with the ones that are already in the Q&A, but Dad, I'm going to need your help with
Okay.
uh three of them. I had some technical difficulties and had to restart my computer, so it cleared
Ah,
away. So while I pull up these questions for you, if you can just look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, just hover your mouse, and you should
mhm.
see Q&A. And if you pull that up, the first
Wait,
question,
wait, wait. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Oh, Q&A. Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So the first three comments, Joe Seeley,
Hey, Joe, how you
Holly,
doing, brother?
your
Hope you
family
still.
members,
Mm-hmm.
and Mama McKinney. So if you can start with those three, then I'll follow up with the rest.
Okay, sure. So, Joe, good to see you again. Joe is a local resident of the DMV. Went to Egypt with us a number of years ago, and I trust you're still making music. So his question is on Facebook, there's been an increase in attributing Kemetic culture, especially the construction of the pyramids of Giza to aliens. Why has it been so difficult to discover text hieroglyphics that explains the construction of such a monumental task, at least to us today? So let me share this with you. We have been blessed to have working at our site one of the foremost archaeologists and architects of Luxor. His name is Dieter Eigner. He's an Austrian architect. He is known as the godfather of the West Bank. He works with everybody, Americans, Europeans, Russians. He's been working at this site for over 50 years. He knows the tombs. He knows the temples. Dieter Eigner was the last European to visit the tombs of South Ossetia, to visit the tomb of Karakhamun before it disappeared, before it was lost. And he wrote a book called The Lost Tombs of South Ossetia. And Alina Pistakova used Dieter Eigner's book to help find these lost tombs. And once they were found, then she invited Eigner to come to the site to see our discoveries. And so he has graced us with his presence every year so that he could do the architectural plans of the tomb as we've excavated it, right? So he's given us a detailed layout of every aspect of the tombs of South Ossetia, the pillared halls, the burial chambers. I mean, he knows his craft. He's a master of his craft. And so last year when I was in Egypt, I had a meeting with him. Eigner is a cool guy. I like him. Most people are intimidated by him, but he and I get along very well. And I can have some serious conversations with him about Egyptian history, about architecture, about a whole host of things. And I asked him, he probably has over 60 years experience with excavations in Kemet and Kush. So he knows Kushite architecture. He knows Kushite history. I asked him if he's ever seen any architectural plans on how they built tombs, how they built temples, how they built the pyramids. And he said he's never seen any. So, Joe, to your question, the Kemites documented everything. We've got records of everything imaginable, medical records, records of grocery lists. We have a record of the first divorce proceeding in history, where a sister won a divorce from her husband. And we have a list of the property that she received. We've got papyri. We've got mathematical papyri. We've got information about practically every aspect of life, but there's no information on the architectural or engineering design of these structures. So Aigner agreed with me. It's not that they didn't create these artifacts. They probably in someone's private collections. And these artifacts probably tell a story that gatekeepers don't want the world to know. And I would hazard a guess that these documents probably tell a story about an unmistakable African presence in the Old Kingdom and the New Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom. And people are sitting on knowledge that they don't want the world revealed. So we may never find these artifacts, but that doesn't stop us from collecting the evidence that we do have access to and creating a narrative based on our examination of this data. And we create our narrative with the understanding that we might be wrong. We might be partially wrong, but we pursue truth with the knowledge that truth is sometimes evasive, especially when you're dealing with truths that are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years old. So the more knowledge we gain, the more we can refine our truths. So it's not like the truth is static and this is what it is and this is what it will always be. No, the truth is something that moves. It's a moving target. And it may take a while for us to clearly understand what these truths really mean, but you have to be engaged in the process, and you can't be arrogant. You can't be selfish. That's at least my position. So those who attribute the creation of these monuments and temples and pyramids to aliens are people who, for the most part, don't know what they're talking about, people who are comfortable selling lies. And in some instances, I found that there are people who are unwilling to accept that Africans could have built these things. It's easier to say that E.T.'s mama or somebody else built the pyramids or built these temples rather than acknowledge that they were created by African architects and engineers and designers. That's an issue that we've been dealing with. I've been dealing with all my career. Mama McKinney, is there a map?
Actually, I meant Mama Laini.
Mama Laini, Laini. I don't see
It should have
her.
been the second one, unless maybe it is Mama McKinney.
No, the second one is Mama McKinney at 726. 726, my birthday. She said, thanks, greetings, brother Karak. Thank you as always for sharing this phenomenal information. Is there a map or is one in development that provides an overview of the pre-colonial region of Kemet, Kush, Ethiopia, and Sudan? I am not aware of that fact. My friend Hunter Adams last week shared a map that he found on the internet, a map that attempted to address some of these issues. And I think everyone agreed that that map appeared to be wrong. One of the things that we have to do when we look at maps is ask the question, who is the map maker? Because map makers generally will create a map based on the information that's available to them. And they also create maps based on their agenda or the agenda of the person who hired them as cartographers to make the maps. So that's a project. There are plenty of projects that I'm waiting on young people to take the responsibility for pursuing. Us older heads are not going to be around forever. We can't do all of this work ourselves. And I don't want anybody else to come to me saying, Tony, you should do this. You should do that. I got enough on my plate. I don't need anybody encouraging me to do anything else. If I finish the 5 things that I currently have on my plate, if I finish them within the next 10 years, I will be happy. So let me do my work. And it's time now for other people to step up and to take the responsibility to do other work. So it's 8:55. I'll keep my answers short, Atlantis. And so Joe also said his trip to Egypt with Tony and Kemet, covering Karnak, Giza's Step Pyramid, Hatshepsut's Temple, and the excavation. He did get a chance to see the excavation was the most meaningful trip that he's ever taken. And you're quite welcome for taking this trip. I guess, we've probably taken over 2,000-3,000 people to Kemet on our study tour since 1987. And I'm kind of ready to pivot. I'm kind of ready to do some other things. Egypt has become a bit inhospitable. There's this growing anti-Afrocentric animus in Egypt. I talk about that briefly in my new book, Finding Karakhamun. I'll be talking about it more in the coming weeks and months. So I'm ready to start moving to some other places, which is the reason why we're looking at doing the Why Kim It Matters tour next year, where we're going to go to Paris and London. I was talking with my travel agent today, and she was just letting me know that that trip is going to be a bit more expensive. It's a shorter trip, but it's going to be more expensive because London and Paris are more expensive. London has the pound, and the Egyptian dollar is lower than the British pound. So we're going to pay more when we go to London. Paris is on the euro, and the rate of the euro is higher than the rate of the US dollar. The US dollar is kind of struggling on world markets. So it's going to cost us a little bit more to see these things. But if you value learning, it's an opportunity to see sites, to see historical sites, and to interact with the African populations in most cities. What we plan to do, and I'm still working out the details, but what we plan to do is to do a Black tour of London, a Black tour of Paris, and we also will have a public lecture at a venue in the community in London and Paris, where we will meet with folk from the community, and we will have a presentation by myself and a local scholar. So we're going to build bridges between our community and the local African communities in Paris and London. So we're putting together the details on that tour. It will be next July. And once we get the details, we will post them on our website, and we encourage those of you who can participate to participate. You have some questions for us now? Oh, I see Rhonda's questions about the books. So I'll be picking up my books tomorrow from the printer. Finch has shipped his books. We have them available. His book is currently available. His book is called Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-year history. You can purchase. I see it's blurring out a bit. It's available now online. It's available at Black bookstores. We also will have the pleasure of Chester Higgins, phenomenal photographer, historian and scholar, and I don't know why it's blurring out, but his wonderful book called Sacred Nile that talks about Kemet, Egypt, and Ethiopia, the Blue Nile and the Nile that runs through Egypt. It talks about the cultures, these ancient cultures, and why they're important to us. Chester will be present at our activities on Saturday evening. Chester was kind enough to donate 4 boxes of books for our fundraiser for the ASA Restoration Project. So those of you who will be attending Saturday's program will have an opportunity to meet Chester. We've got door prizes. We've got some surprises. We're going to have a musical performance by Sister Free, who is the phenomenal artist who has done the poster for the ASA Restoration Project. She's doing the artwork for the John Henry Clark Enhanced History Project. So she is not only a talented artist, but she is an incredible musician. She'll grace us with the performance on Saturday. I'm not going to blow it because she's got something special planned. And I'll share this with you. I was informed last week that 9 members of the Hilliard family will be present. ASA's wife, Patsy, will be present, as well as their 2 surviving children, Roby and Hakeem. Hakeem's daughter, Asa, will also be there, along with other relatives. So the Hilliards will be in the house, and we'll also have some special guests. So you want to be there on Saturday, the 21st of September. It's an event that you will remember. Next question, Atlantis.
So there's actually 12 questions left, but let's do this because it is 9:01. So let me just make a couple of announcements for those who may not be able to stay on a little bit longer. I just put in the chat the links for a number of things. Some folks asked about how to purchase our publications, so you can get them from the IKG website. Some also asked about how to donate to the ASA Restoration Project. So that link is also in the chat. You can donate through Cash App, PayPal, or you can send a, a check as well. The next Wisdom Wednesday is on October 16th. We have the Friends of the Congo who have been joining us for Wisdom Wednesday for I think for over a decade now, but it is their Break the Silence week. So we invite you to register for October Wisdom Wednesday and support the Friends of the Congo. And we also want to make sure that you know the Friday event is sold out in person, but tickets are available for live stream. So that link is in the event, excuse me, is in the chat as well as the link for Saturday's event. All right. All right, let's see how many questions we can get through, Dad. How much time are you?
If I can do this, I saw Gerald Kent had a question. They purchased a ticket for the in-person presentation with Finch and I on Friday, but they won't be able to attend until Saturday. So the tickets are purchased through Eventbrite, so we can't.
Actually, hold on, Dad. So, Jerio, if you can go back through Eventbrite, and if you can just request a refund, we'll go ahead and process that, and then you can just purchase the correct ticket for the live stream.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's see. Question by Eric. He would like to know the beginning. All right, and Dad, can we keep our you keep your
Yeah, I'll keep my responses short. I'll
okay.
be like you.
Uh, all right. Hey, straight to the point. All right. Eric asked, he would like to know the beginning of the weighing of the heart or soul ceremony.
So listen, that information is in Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. I walk you through the various steps. So if you have that book, the details are there. And if you are at Friday's event, I would ask you to ask the question so that a larger audience could hear the answer. So I don't want to use our precious time to answer that question when it's available in the source that you have access to. I see a couple of questions here in the Q&A that I can respond to briefly. Cheryl Washington said, once the tomb of Karakhamun is open to the public, will there be any more excavation in Egypt with Alina? The issue is it costs money to do excavation. Alina will love to continue, but we've spent over $3 million over the past 15 years. That's a lot of money. And it takes, we could literally spend the next 50 years excavating at that site. And it would probably cost us 30 or $40 million over the course of the next 50 years. So if the money is available, if any of you all have hit the lottery and want to donate to a worthy cause, then I'll make sure that money is invested properly. But there's other things to do, and we have to use our time and our resources strategically. Bernie Goldman, hey Bernie, how are you doing, my brother? What happened to the people who had homes on the site of the tombs? Those homes were demolished around 2009, and a new city was built a couple of miles away. I had the opportunity to visit some of the workers who were a couple of the elder workers who worked at our site. And, you know, I used to kid around with some of the guys to break up some of the monotony. And they were, had gotten up in age and they were no longer able to work for us. So some of the guys, some of the conservators took me over to his house to visit them. So they're living in new houses that have indoor plumbing, toilets and, and indoor water, showers. So they're living a nicer life. I was pleased to see that the Egyptian government did them right. So Atlantis, you have any more questions?
Yes. This is a question from Brother Amari. Greetings, Amari Jackson. He asked,
GL. Mm-hmm.
could those documents, I'm not exactly sure what documents he's referring to, but he asked if those documents could be in the Timbuktu manuscript.
Sure. I don't know about that. You know, Henry Skip the Truth Gates a couple of years ago in one of his documentaries visited Timbuktu, where they have a collection of books that are hundreds of years old, manuscripts, and made the suggestion, the embarrassing and foolish suggestion, that maybe he should just take them to Harvard for safekeeping. This man has no respect for African people. I have no knowledge as to whether or not there is information about the Nile to the Niger migrations in those manuscripts. I don't read Arabic. I have not seen a translation of any of those manuscripts to be able to answer that question. But that is a research topic for somebody. I'm sure we've got some curious people out here, some people who may be in graduate school, who might be willing to take that on as a task. So there's so much work that needs to be done. Brother Mari, I want to acknowledge you and your work, his work, Jelani's Key, a book that he published last year, a children's book for African-American males primarily. It's a coming-of-age story about two young Black boys who cultivate a friendship, and this friendship is tested, bonds are expanded as they search for this key. And this key is a key that leads to important information about Karakhamun's tomb. So it's a wonderful book for a young person, a young male specifically, a coming-of-age story. So I would encourage you all to pick up a copy of Jelani's Key. You can purchase this through as part of the African American Literature Book Club. Google them. Big shout out to Brother Troy down in Tampa, Florida, who published the book and runs this organization. And Brother Mari was kind enough to donate proceeds from the sale of this book to the ASA Restoration Project. So there's many different ways people can support our work. There's many different ways people have shown their appreciation for the work that we've done. So I thank everyone who's been a part of this collaborative effort. Next question, Atlantis.
All right, so we have 4 questions left. I think we can get through them quickly.
Okay.
Eric had another question. He asked, how can he volunteer to help?
Sure. Well, one of the ways you can volunteer is by financial support. We are no longer bringing volunteers to the site because we have graduated from having a need for a lot of people to help us with registration. We're in restoration mode now. And with restoration, we need the work of our skilled conservators, architects, and engineers. But you can help by getting the word out. You can help by making contributions and encouraging people to make contributions. If you're a member of a fraternity, a sorority, a church, you could encourage people to buy the books, read the books, engage in study groups. You can support what my daughter is doing and start a CIP, Cultural Imperative Program, in your community and bring together young African-American children specifically who can read about this history and culture and help us train the next generation of archaeologists, Egyptologists, architects, engineers, designers, historians, educators. There's so many things that you can do. You don't have to go to Egypt to do the work. And at this point, with the ASA Restoration Project, we need to bring our time and our treasure back home. We know for a fact that there are people right now in this country, right now in states bordering Maryland, who don't want this type of information to be taught in classrooms or on the internet. So we are fighting for our lives right now. And now more than ever, we need the assistance of our ancestors to help us win this fight. And we have to prove to them, prove to ourselves, and prove to our children that this is a fight worth fighting for and a fight worth winning. Next question, please.
All right. And thank you, Brother Eric. Before you could even finish asking his questions, he let us know that he donated to the project. So thank you for that. And also thank you to, I know there's many of you all on here who have donated and truly supported us over the years. So thank you. Thank you. All right. Our next question comes from the peaceful Sabrina Johnson. Peaceful greetings. Excellent presentation. As always, thank you. Have colleagues in Egypt expressed any concerns about the conditions of the Nile River?
No, they haven't. And it's important to note that the Nile River is the most polluted river on the planet. Since the creation of the Aswan Dam and the creation of Lake Nasser, the Nile River no longer floods annually as it had done for thousands of years, which means that you don't get fresh water flowing through like you used to. You don't get the silt from Ethiopia to fertilize the land. And as a consequence, the Egyptians have had to rely on chemical fertilizer over the past 60 years or so. And as a result of the increased use of chemical fertilizer, there's been a corresponding increase in cancers, specifically pancreatic cancer, cancer of the liver. The conservator who I told you worked with us in the past, he died of pancreatic cancer. His uncle, my dear friend Abu Naga, who was my guide in Egypt for 21 years, he died of pancreatic cancer. So there's been a corresponding increase in pancreatic cancer and other forms of cancer as a result of the use of chemical fertilizers in Egypt. Another metaphor, rather graphic metaphor that I share with people who travel to Egypt with us is that since the building of the Aswan Dam in the 1960s, you no longer have the Nile River flooding with the intensity that it did for thousands of years. And so it's like a toilet that hasn't been flushed in 60 years. You have millions of people in Egypt who are using that toilet every day, toilet that hasn't been flushed. So the Nile River is the most polluted river in the world. You've got cruise ships sailing up and down the river, depositing God knows what in that river. So there are a number of ecological issues that Egypt will be confronted with for the next century or two. Whether or not they're addressing those issues remains to be seen. And Egypt is in a very difficult position right now because their economy is in the toilet due to the war in Ukraine. Egypt gets their wheat from Ukraine. The crisis in Gaza right now has created a problem for the Egyptian government. The war in Sudan has created a problem for Egypt. So Egypt is now burdened with problems that are not of their own making. And it's put a strain on the government. It's put a strain on all resources. The Egyptian pound is in the toilet. It's at its lowest rate ever. It's, I think, 47 Egyptian pounds to $1 US. Last year, it was about 20 to 1. So people aren't making any money. Their money is not going anywhere. So let me not, spend too much time talking about that. Egypt has problems. Everybody has problems. America will have problems if y'all don't get out and vote for the right person. Yeah, we have a choice between a wolf or a fox, but I'd rather deal with the fox than the wolf any day. A stupid wolf at that. So everyone has a responsibility to help make America sane again, right? And I know from my own personal experiences that as America goes, so goes the rest of the world. And regarding African Americans, I know that the world follows what African Americans do. So when we have our stuff together, we influence people of African ancestry all over the world. We need to step up. We need to be more accountable, more responsible, and we need to play a personal leadership role in how we conduct our own family affairs. And if we truly, honor our ancestors, who too many people say were kings and queens, and we did this, we did that, then we need to demonstrate it in our own backyard. You need to act like a king, act like a queen, act like a prince, act like royalty, act like greatness, and amplify those actions so that everywhere you go, somebody will look at you and say, there goes a brother, there goes a sister who has this stuff together. I want to be like them. That's something that we can do. You don't need anybody's permission to do that. And we just need to step up. Next question, Atlantis.
All right, last two questions.
Okay.
The next one is about the opening date for the Egyptian Museum, the grand opening for the Egyptian Museum.
Yeah. Well, the grand opening of the Egyptian Museum is about 11 years behind schedule. It costs, I think, $1.3 billion. It's the most expensive museum in history. It's the largest museum in history. We had an opportunity to visit it this past July, and I would say only 40% of the museum is ready for the public. So they've been doing this soft opening. When it will actually open, I don't know. Sometime soon, I hope.
All right, last question. Um, this person, well, first of all, they said excellent presentation, extremely proud of the work that you and your team are doing. They heard you on Carl Nelson's show, and you said something about working with National Geographic, and they want to know a little bit more about that.
Nope. I didn't say anything about working with National Geographic. They are in error. Anonymous, you are in error about that. Or if I did say it, I misspoke. You know, sometimes when you're doing these interviews, thoughts are flooding your mind, and sometimes we misspeak. So if I don't recall saying anything about National Geographic, I haven't done anything with them. What I can tell you all is that during this summer, I had the opportunity to tape two programs that were run on cable. Hopefully sometime this fall. I did a taping of History Channel's program that is hosted by Lawrence Fishburne that will air probably later on this year. And in July, I was in New York and did a taping for a program on King Tut, the mysteries and the histories surrounding King Tut. And I was informed that that program will air next month, likely sometime before Halloween. So trust me, once I have information on when these programs will air, I will let you know and encourage you all to watch the program and to let the station, the sponsor of those programs, know that you appreciate it. So I'll wind down with these thoughts that I was invited to do two programs, and National Geographic and other people have talked about taping us before, but those potential interviews have always fall short. And one of the reasons they've fallen short is because many people who wanted to interview us about the site wanted to focus on the race of the Egyptians, wanted to limit the 25th dynasty to the Negro dynasty. And I'm not going to play those games. If they don't want to know about the history of Kemet, they don't want to know about the truth about Kush and its relationship to Nile Valley civilization, I'm not going to waste my time with them because we have no control over the editorial content. They record you, but they determine what they use. These two programs that I recorded this past summer, I recorded because they reached out to me. They recognize that I am something of an authority on the subject matter, and they're looking for a Black face to add some diversity to the conversation. So I'm pleased to be able to play that role. And in both instances, they were quite impressed with the information that I had to share. There was much more information that I provided than I know that they can use on the program, which emphasizes the importance of us doing our own programs. It emphasizes the importance of us doing our own documentaries. So I've been in conversation with a colleague of mine, a well-known filmmaker, and we've been talking about producing something on Kush, producing something on Kemet that would be high quality and tell a story that has not been told accurately yet. So with your continued support for everything that we're doing, your moral support, your financial support, purchasing our books, attending our Wisdom Wednesday lectures, other activities, that all helps. Letting other people know that we're here helps. We're going to be adding a new feature to the IKG website. This fall, we've digitized all of our content, so we're no longer going to be dealing with CDs and DVDs and stuff like that. Everything is going to be digitized, so you'll be able to access our catalog. We are taking many of the lectures that we did during our Free Your Mind lectures in the 80s and 90s. Those have already been digitized. We're going to make that information available at the IKG website, so you'll be able to hear from scholars who are no longer living, scholars who have a wealth of information to share. And I want to create a new generation of interest in information that's hundreds of years old. So I'm asking for your assistance to help us get the word out. That's the only way we can do what we do. You know somebody in your family, you know somebody in your church, you know someone in your fraternity, your sorority, your barbershop, your beauty shop, somebody who can benefit from this knowledge. So let's cultivate a community of informed readers and listeners. Let's cultivate a community of people who will call into radio shows like the Carl Nelson Show, or like Nkechi Taifa's show on WPFW, which I had the pleasure of hosting these last 2 weeks, like Kaba's show on WPFW. We need to have informed listeners and people who are willing to support, commercial and non-commercial stations. We spend millions of dollars, billions of dollars every year supporting people who don't give anything back to our community. So let's be wise. Let's put our money where our hearts and our minds and our souls should be. And that is investing in people who look like you and who do us service. So with that, Atlantis, it's 9:22. Sorry for running over. I'm done. And I invite you all to see us on Friday, see us on Saturday. You're going to have a wonderful weekend helping us celebrate the 16th anniversary, the 16th birthday of the ASA Restoration Project. Thank you much. Take it away, Atlantis. And because of the fact that there's a delay and I hear the baby downstairs, you're probably busy working with the baby, doing something with the baby. So I will close everybody out. I'll do it myself. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here. This recording will be posted on the IKG YouTube channel in a couple of days. Probably won't do it before Monday because I've got a ton of things to do in preparation for this weekend. But I'll see you all Friday. I'll see you all Saturday. And there's plenty of wonderful things on the horizon. Thank you all so much for your time and attention this evening. And I look forward to seeing you real soon. Good night.